Welcome back to this series on the Universal Core Truths. Today we're going to be looking at Universal Core Truth number 3, all beings are connected. I am the Stressless Guru, caring for the mind, the body, and the soul. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing topics concerning the mind, the body, and the soul. This might be one of the most important teachings of our time. Our world is falling apart due to government-sanctioned, religion-driven division, tribalism, and violence. However, if we really understood in our bones that we are not separate, that what I do to you, I do to myself, that humanity is one organism, and we are all cells in its body, everything would change. This isn't New Age wishful thinking or a poetic metaphor. This is the teaching of every mystical and indigenous tradition. And increasingly, it's what modern physics and systems theory is discovering. The Upanishads taught that thou art. You and the ultimate reality, or Brahman, are not separate. Buddhism teaches independent organization. Nothing exists independently. Everything arises through relationship. Jesus said, "What you do to the least of these, you do to me." Quantum physics reveals that particles remain entangled across space, that the observer and the observed are not separate, that reality is fundamentally relational, not atomic. The core teaching is the sense of being a separate, isolated individual is a useful fiction for navigating daily life, but it's not ultimate reality. Reality is fundamentally relational, interconnected, interdependent. Nothing exists in isolation. You don't exist independently of the air that you breathe, the food that you eat, the parents who made you, the culture that shaped you, the ecosystems that sustained you, the universe that birthed you. When you look closely at what you call yourself, you find relationships all the way down. You're not a thing, you're a process, a meeting point of countless other processes. The atoms in your body were forged in stars billions of years ago. The oxygen that you breathe right now was exhaled by a tree. Where does you begin and not you end? The boundary is arbitrary, convenient, but not ultimate reality. And this isn't just philosophy. It has profound ethical implications. If we are all truly interconnected, then harming another is harming yourself. Healing another is healing yourself. Your well-being and my well-being are not separate concerns. They're the same concern. This is why every tradition realizes interconnection naturally develops ethics of compassion, justice, and care for all beings. Not because some authority commanded it, but because it flows from understanding reality as it is. You don't need to be convinced to care for your own body. You just do it naturally. But when you realize all beings are your body, you care for them the same way. So how do you take away from this understanding of interconnection? First, practice seeing yourself in others. When you encounter someone, especially someone that's really different from you, someone that you disagree with, someone you find difficult, pause and remember, this person is not separate from me. Waves in the same ocean. Ask yourself, what does this person want? What is motivating that person? Safety, love, respect, freedom from suffering. Are these the same things that you want? This doesn't mean that we need to be excusing harm or accepting of injustices. By no means, it's not what I'm saying. But it means approaching from a connection rather than a separation. Seeing ourselves in that person. Second, we need to recognize that your choices ripple outward through the web of interconnectedness. What you eat affects farmers, the animals, the land, the water. What you buy affects workers, communities. All of it affects the whole system that you are part of. You can't be perfectly pure. You're embedded in a system, but you can be more conscious, make choices that reduce harm and increase flourishing. Third, serve others. Not out of a sense of obligation or guilt, but out of recognition that their well-being and your well-being are not separate. Caring for others is caring for the whole, which includes you. Recognizing your true self is not limited to your individual body. Finally, you want to cultivate awareness of interdependency in daily life. Notice how you depend on others. The people who grew your food, the people who built your home, maintain our infrastructure. I go out and use the streets. Okay, that's a bad example. The streets here are not great. But they're not great because the whole is suffering. Notice how dependent we are on nature, on water, on air. If air quality is out the window, you don't want to go outside. If the soil's bad, we can't grow the food. Notice how your mood affects others. How your mood affects their mood. And how their moods affect you. Interconnection isn't just philosophy. It's lived reality. Once you start paying attention, it becomes very obvious. So here's my invitation to you. What if there is no others? If the boundary between self and other, the sense of being separate and isolated, is the source of almost all suffering. Think about it for a moment. Fear comes from feeling vulnerable, from feeling separate. I remember when I was a small child, I was never more frightened than when I got separated from my parents. I was vulnerable, I was separate, and I was surrounded by strangers. If I was aware that I was part of a whole, and that whole saw me as part of it, there would be no strangers. We would all be family. We would all be safe. After all, what is an adult except a large child putting on a brave face, trying not to be scared and navigate this world the best we can? What would we fear? Violence comes from othering. Seeing someone as so fundamentally different from ourselves, so non-me, that harming them doesn't feel like I'm harming myself. Exploitation of nature comes from seeing it as separate, as a resource, as an expendable natural resource, rather than a relationship. We, to a corporation, are exploitable human resources. You see what they do to nature, they do to us as well. We let them do it. For the exchange of our mental, physical, and spiritual health, they give us some digital numbers in our bank account every few weeks. All of these things, fear, violence, exploitation, greed, indifference to suffering, they're all rooted in the illusion of separation. Now, imagine the opposite. What if you recognize in your bones that we're all connected? That what you do to another person, you do to yourself. What happens to the environment? What happens to you? My suffering is your suffering. They're not separate. How would we live? Love your neighbor as yourself stops being a difficult commandment and becomes obvious when your neighbor is you, when you see yourself in your neighbor, because we are all interconnected, just in a different form. Compassion flows naturally because another's pain is your pain. Justice becomes essential because injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, affecting the whole web. Environmental care becomes self-care because you are not separate from nature. The healing of the world, personal healing, all begins with this one recognition. We're not separate. There is an urgency with this teaching that may not necessarily have been there before. For most of our history, we could maintain an illusion of separation, and it would only really harm us spiritually, so to speak. But now, this illusion of separation is actually starting to kill us physically. Corporations and hostile governments are buying up farmland in countries all around the world. They see us as adversaries. The concept of us versus them is so deeply ingrained that throughout the entire world there are facilities designing biological agents to take out the others. We saw this firsthand as a world, how one accidental possible leak from a lab threatened the existence of all mankind in a matter of months. And now, with farmland being bought up by mega corporations and world governments, the very food that we eat could be threatened because they view us as the other. It doesn't matter your political affiliations or leanings. These are just more things to cause division among you and me. But the wise recognize that the left or right, all in political parties, they're all the same machine, just packaged differently on the left or the right to appease one team over the other. Though on the outside, there may be minor differences between parties that they're using for like marketing campaigns, but they're all focusing on maximizing their own power and dominion over others at the expense of all of us. We're all connected, every single one of us, from the rich CEO to the person seeking refuge from a storm underneath a bridge, homeless. We need to open our eyes, see what's out there, and be wise. Think. But the actions of faceless corporations are coming back to us in the forms of fires, floods, droughts, displaced populations. Pandemics are another interconnected problem that we have faced as a global community. A virus emerges in one market, in one city, and within months the entire world is affected because we are globally interconnected through travel and trade. Economic inequality is an interconnected problem. We pretend that extreme wealth for some and extreme poverty for others could coexist peacefully. That their suffering doesn't affect our well-being, but it does. Through crime, instability, migration, and the erosion of our very social fabric. We either learn to live as one human family on one planet, recognizing our fundamental interconnection and acting accordingly, or we will continue down a path of separation, competition, and exploitation. And that path, we don't survive. Now, please, carefully hear my words. I'm not calling for radical action against anyone, against any government, corporation. Truly, that kind of action just adds to the problem. I'm simply calling out the symptoms of the illusion of separation that most of us on some level have some knowledge of. Violence is not and never is the answer. It is through unity and community alone that good will prevail, seeing everyone as part of ourselves. I also feel, for whatever reason, having said all that stuff, that it's important to let you know I'm happy, I'm healthy, I work out, I love life, I'm free from depression and most anxiety, I have no desire to self-harm, and because I care deeply about my friends and family, I see us all as one. I make sure to check in with my friends and family to help keep their mental, physical, and spiritual health in check as well. If, having said all of the stuff I just said, one day, one of us, myself, my friends or family, just no longer are here anymore, ask questions and demand answers. I say it partially joking, but also very seriously. Next time, we're going to be exploring the fourth universal core truth, that there is light in everyone. The divine spark, the Buddha nature, the image of God is in every person. The recognition that all beings carry sacred potential. Watch what you're planting out there. Your future self will thank you. I am the Stressless Guru, caring for the mind, the body, and the soul. And until next time, stress less and live more.